Episode 6, we find more of the man-made laws, traditions, and commandments. And so this is the problem that was time that Yeshua was on earth, the added commandments and laws and traditions that they have added, trying to build a fence, I should say, around the Torah. And so this was the problem. Now we had an issue of a man who wanted to get into the pool, and remember, he was lame, he couldn't walk, and so he wanted someone to put him in the pool, but he would never make it. I think it was over 30 years. In episode 6 we talked about that he have been sick. This is the very man that Yeshua told him to take up his pallet and walk, and he took up his pallet and walked, and he was healed. But the Pharisees noticed this. So what the Pharisees did is asked him, who told you to take your pallet and walk? And it was against their traditions for them to do that. It wasn't, there's nothing in the Torah that said that you couldn't pick up your pallet and walk. You couldn't carry your pallet, your mat, whatever you needed at that moment. So this was their law, and this law was putting burden on people. Now, I did also find it interesting that the man later, because he did not know who Yeshua was, who healed him, but he later found him, and Yeshua said one thing to him. You know, one statement stood out more to me is, so he told them not to sin. Now, how did he know what sin was? So the Torah still was being taught at that time, and he told him not to sin. And one thing people should know that in 1 John 3:4 it says, whoever committed sin transgressed also the law, for sin is a transgression of the law. So that's how we find out what sin is. And so that was the problem about sin. They knew what sin was because Moses, the law was taught. So, but again, their traditions and their laws was more important for them. So this is where they went to. And then I think another part that was important for episode 6 is his relationship with his father. He really talked about that relationship that was very important, and he was recognizing that the father was speaking to him and demonstrating to him of what he should do. But many people don't realize that Yeshua, he came in the Father's name. He came to declare the Father's name. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. How can you believe when you accept glory from only one another and you do not seek the glory that is from the one and only Elohim? Verse 45. Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father, for the one who accused you is Moses, in whom you have put your hope. For if you believed Moses, you will believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So it was important to remember, we talked about this previously, that Moses said the prophet was coming. He said, Yeshua told him, well, Jehovah told him, I will raise up from them a prophet from among their countrymen like you, and I will put my words in his mouth. I will seek and speak to them everything that I command him, and it shall come about that whoever does not listen to my words, which he speaks in my name, I myself will require it of him. And that's Deuteronomy 18 through 19. So they knew that the prophet was coming, and they knew that they had to obey the prophet, which was Yeshua. John 17:6. Now, people don't understand that he came to declare the Father's name. But if you read John chapter 17, that prayer that Yeshua prays, I recommend everyone to read John chapter 17. He said in verse 6, I'm just this snippet, and I think I read that in episode 6. He said, I have revealed your name to the men whom you gave me out of the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they follow your word. So that's another understanding of the whole word of truth. Reading everything together, that he came in his Father's name. He was teaching the disciples of the Father's name, and he was teaching the disciples the Father word. he was clearing them up from all these commandments from all these different religious leaders. Remember, they had the Pharisees, the scribes, the Herodians. I mean, there were so many different denominations that was in the land at that time, which first came out of Babylon and started building up and building up. So that's what episode 6 was about.